fine. Thank you, Peggy. Oops, wrong one. That is the slideshare, by the way. You could find it there. So, welcome everyone to American TESOL Presents Free Friday webinars. I'm your hostess, Shelly Sanchez Terrell. And today we're going to talk about playground learning. So, these are things that you can do around your school grounds, or you can even do them outside. You can even do them in the home with kids. We're here every Friday and it's free. You can bring people along thanks to American TESOL. We do have our next ESL Techcom course coming up pretty soon. Actually, we have the first session in next week. We'll start and we go through several different course outlines, and you complete tasks and you can get your technology and teaching certification from American TESOL if you complete the course. But if not, you can always get a certificate of attendance, which we will be awarding very soon for those of you who have signed our form for that. So let's continue because there's tons of information. And a lot of the information, thank you, Peggy George, for posting inside the chat box where you can download the free slides. So you can always get that as well. Play is definitely our brain's favorite way of learning. And I was recently in Indiana yesterday and for quite a few days this whole week talking about Dr. Seuss and talking about play and different activities based on that. We don't get to play today in our virtual classroom, but we will look at some ideas for encouraging play that are pretty quick that you could use right away. And I encourage you that if you're off for the summer, if you're not able to implement this in your classroom right away now, then you can definitely do this with other children that are surrounding you. So if you have a niece, if you have your own children, if you have a nephew, if you're taking care of friends' kids, then you can try these ideas before you get into the classroom. So there's several different ideas for having an encouraging play. And with play, I mean getting students to move, getting students to explore, to have that freedom. If you think about 2-year-olds and you think about 2 and 3-year-olds or toddlers and how we let them just play with each other, how we don't really we don't try to guide it so much. We just let them play. We let them, if they're getting a cup and then they're making a sandcastle, or if they're just making mud pies, we don't say you got it wrong or try this. We just let them play. When they play with each other, you'll often find they don't even really have that much, they don't even have to talk to each other much. They learn to collaborate, they learn some really great social skills as well. Oops. So make that a little bit bigger there. So one of the first things that you can do, so these aren't necessarily for grade, but there are some different ways to use the playground grounds, not travel very far, and to get them to also learn. And there are some things that you can grade in this presentation. But we're going to start with this one, which is outdoor board game challenges. So if you have many different types of board games, or if you talk with your students ahead of time, ask them if they have different board games they like to play, like checkers or chess. Often, at least in the US, and I've seen some other places like this, like in Japan and in Europe, I've seen €1 stores or $1 stores. And in these great stores, you can buy a lot of these board games and they cost only $1. So that's very inexpensive. You can, on a very nice day, you can get your students to get these board games, play with each other in groups or pairs, challenge each other, and see what they learn along the way. You can also often get the ones that are really huge, the ones where it's life-size chess or checkers, and that's a lot of fun as well. Playing sports is a great way to teach students. You can always host a field day. When I was young, that was some of my favorite times going to school. We every single year we have a field day or an Olympics game day, Olympics Games Day. Sorry about that. And then you can also have, if there's a World Cup, you can have the World Cup Day to celebrate that. You can do different types of sports that are playing, Wimberley or anything like that. You can celebrate those occasions and get your students to track the statistics. They can track the player statistics. They can make predictions who they think who's gonna win, and all of these. And then they can replicate the game outside. So they can definitely learn some statistics with that, and that's a great way to integrate some math. But you can also teach them sports from various countries. In Germany, when I was teaching my students, and it was during, we had one of the Olympics years. I believe this was the time it was in probably the UK at the time. It might have been earlier. It might have been in Beijing, but we looked at the sport curling. Curling had gone into the Olympics, and it was new for me. I had never seen this, but my German students were able to teach me a lot about curling, and then we could play a mock curling game. We didn't need necessarily. We could have, for example, a broom, and that worked well too. So you don't necessarily have to pay so a lot of money so you can get high equipment or anything like that. Sometimes you can get something as simple as a broom in your house, and then make your own little disc and then play. So that's nice. You learn things like how to take score. So taking score is definitely some math there. You learn things about strategy. So you can put in some math because you can learn about distance. You can learn about the weight of that curling disc, the length of the stick, what is the regulation length for the Olympics, things like that. You can learn these regulations and rules, which have a lot to do with math and culture. So that's really nice. When we talk about language teaching and language learning, one of the key terms that comes up, especially in Europe and Asia and abroad, is CLIL. And CLIL is Content Language Integrated Learning. We have a webinar on that, and I'm going to share with you the links again. This is where you'll find all of our 200 plus videos of these recordings. American TESOL is very good about blogging all of these as well. So you can look up CLIL, Content Language Integrated Learning, and you're going to be able to find what I'm talking about. But with Content Language Integrated Learning, they stress learning different skills like math and science and history and geography while you also learn language. But another important component is integrating culture. And so a lot of times it's hard for us to integrate culture, but when you try sports and you talk about sports, well, that you can learn a lot about culture and the history of how that game came about, the history of curling, for example. The other one that would be really good is for them to invent a sport. So after they've studied several sports, they've played several sports, and the great thing is that establishes relationships and teamwork. Well, then you can get them into groups, give them many supplies they can choose from. You can put either a whole bunch that you got from home, or maybe that you borrowed from maybe the gym or PE teacher or something. Or you can have the students make their own. And then you put it in a pile and you tell them, okay, choose 3 or 4 for your new sport that you're inventing. Now, I like to come up with different storylines that are pretend storylines to get them excited. One of the storylines I came up with is it's the Olympics. What we want to do is the Olympics wants to create a brand new sport that anyone can play. Um, and we're going to introduce it to the Olympics this year. So you get to invent that sport. In the end, we'll all learn the rules, we'll play the sport, you can teach it to us, and then we'll all vote on which are the ones we think would be really great contenders for the new Olympic sport game to be introduced. So you can do something like that, make a pretend story like that, and then you can get the students involved in it. You can have them create infographics afterwards, or make informational videos, or they can make how-to. They can do a lot of things to introduce and post their ideas to share to the world. So if you have a blog, if you have where you can just post your student projects, that's a good idea as well. So there's a lot of playground equipment that you'll often see around the school grounds. And the playground is a great opportunity if you have a playground at your school, or you have one at a nearby park. I know when I was in Germany, they often had them at nearby parks, and we could take the students. Well, if this is the case, there's a lot of math and science learning that can go on with that. What you can teach students, other than the components, you can teach them the language of slide, of distance, of acceleration, because, and that's the science. There are equations that test the speed of how much you will slide according to your clothes. Well, my clothes are sticky. Maybe if I wore this. And so you can even have them test different options. They can study and the science and math of the playground, and what makes them go faster, slower. If I have two people, do you predict? If you have two people, do you predict you're going to go faster or slower? How about three people? Um, if you're taller, are you going to go faster than a student that is shorter? And so these are all equations and stuff that you can test out. Have the students predict first what they believe will be the outcome, and then let them test that science, and test that math out as well. But then have them build their own after they learn the angles and what makes the material, and what makes the slides or the swings and everything better. Then what they can do is they can build their own. They can make little miniature versions or models, and you can have their models or their miniature versions, or even if they decide to build a much bigger life one, then this could be something that you can ask engineers and builders to come and give their input. You can even have a panel or judge of engineers and builders come out and critique and predict and help them build better ones and better models. So they learn a lot, and they get to see some of the local contractors and engineers work with them. And of course, they can't travel. You can always Skype them in. That's one of the great things about Skype or Google Hangouts, is that you can that way get contractors and builders from all over the world. Maybe some ones that are really famous specifically for playgrounds, and then they can help your students and inspire them. And you can interview them too, how they got in the business of designing things. And you could invite someone, for example, like a roller coaster expert. And the students just find that very interesting. They can measure their own shadows. They can also, after they measure their shadows, they measure the time, they measure the day, and they measure the length of their shadow. They can measure each other's shadows, but then they can bring in little objects. They can take in dolls, they can take in stuffed animals, they can take in different things they make out of Play-Doh. And what they do is you give them a set time where you all are going to go out and you're going to measure these shadows, but they predict. They draw the shadow and they predict, okay, this is where the shadow is going to be because of the sun. So you see if they actually learned, they learned that math and that science, because you get to see if they understand where shadows, the formation of shadows according to the sun. So these are things that you can do. And have them study their own, but then they bring in other objects, and then they make predictions, and then they can see where they went wrong. So even if they don't predict it right, they see where it went wrong, and they can change it, and they'll learn from that. They can test different distances and angles to improve their game. So with this particular idea, you would have your students choose a player. And recently we had the U.S. Olympic team, the females win some important games, and So it's very exciting time. You can even have the females. We sometimes don't think the girls will, but the girls love heroes too. So you can have them study whoever their favorite players are, have them study their angles. Well, why is this player so good at basketball or baseball? Well, it's the angle of the hands, is it, what kind of um, how are you going to be able to throw the ball if you do it this way versus this way versus that way? What if I swing my bat this way low versus swinging it this way? So these are things, or what if I extend it like this? So these are things that your students can measure they can look at videos and stuff and begin to see the angles and the measures of their favorite players and get to see that science and math have a very important part of making that player particularly good. And what they can do is then they can try to practice making their bodies at those angles so that way they can see if it improves their game as well. So that's a idea. You can even just test different angles and distances within playing a game. So, for example, you can have them simply stand together, give them a ball, and they toss it back and forth. Then you ask them, okay, predict what's going to happen. How are you going to have to extend your arms? What are the changes in your body if you go a few more distance? So these are different things they could do. And Peggy George just put another great idea that they could have different size balls to be used as well. Yeah, definitely. And that shows the difference in equation because if you look at different equations, it's usually like mass acceleration. So you see a lot of these things, they can change that it within the equation and they see it in real life. You can have fun with a lot of chalk. It is messy. So if you do work with young learners, if you work with kids, if you work in general with different um, shocked, then one of the things you want to do is get aprons. It's a good idea when you are working and it's going to be a bit messy and you're going to go outside, that at those times, especially with chalk and stuff, you have aprons because then you'll dirty the clothes. You do want to get chalk or colors when you're working with colors and anything in general that say that they're non-toxic. That's really important when working with students. Make sure it's non-toxic, especially if you're with real little ones. So you can even do sorry, my pronunciation. But what you can do is you have little. If you work with toddlers, they might try to eat it. So it's always good to get non-toxic and tell them it's. And also they wipe. They tend to wipe, so the aprons are really good for that. A lot of times, sometimes we can't afford that. Then I'll get bags, paper. I'll get the trash bags, and we'll wear those. And that's what we do. But I try to get parents and stuff to get aprons as part of their school supplies. The other idea is there's a lot you can do with chalk. You can have hopscotch, which teaches math, gets them moving. They can visualize word problems. One of the students can start a story. They can start the scene, and each one tell that scene. Like, ooh, once upon a time there was a pug, and they draw the pug, and he was in this big castle. He was a prince named Roscoe. And then the other student jumps in, the other and starts adding to that scene and adds more to the story. My suggestion would be get someone who wants to be a reporter to write it down. So that way at the end you have all this story recorded. And you can also record it with your phone. You can now people are periscoping, you could periscope it. Yes, that's a great thing to note. Peggy put in the chat box. Chalk is not permanent and will wear away or wash away with rain. So yeah, so if you want to preserve it, then definitely you're gonna have to take a picture or something with it. Draw relays to where you have even vocabulary challenges. You give them a card, they have to draw it, and then the next person draws. Or you can have it where it's like a win, lose, or draw, where the team has to guess what it is in a certain time. If they don't, then the other team can guess that drawing. Some other ideas, you can have them create. So geocaching is this. You have it in your city. You can download a free geocaching app, or there's a geocaching site. It's free. I do this often whenever I'm running low on funds, but I want to go exploring. I want to have fun. I do geocaching. So there's a bunch of different free geocaching apps. I think that it's much better to have a compass. So what I'm going to do is provide your, there you go. There's a geocaching site there. That's online, but you can also download free apps. So geocaching is around your city, and what it is it's a little box, usually even smaller than that, and it comes with little treasures. You usually put your name that you found it. They give you the longitude and the latitude of where to find your, and you can use a compass to go around and find it. So my suggestion is, you want to stay in the school grounds. Get your students to each create one. Get them to pinpoint the longitude and latitude and give hints and clues, and they can do it around the school. And then everybody in the school can have fun trying to find those different geocaches. If you have an upcoming test or something, they can either put little treasures in it, like sometimes they have little stickers and things like that that the students can find, or you can have it to where they find the answers to a test or something like that. Um, you can have them jump rope. Jump rope is something that I've done with my young learners, uh, especially language learners. With jump roping, there are many different chants that teach you math, alphabet, vocabulary, grammar, and also counting as well. So for this one in particular, inside the chat box, what is it that you have? What kind of skills do you learn here? What can you learn from this jump rope chant? There are many different types of jump rope chant. We even have done one, I think, completely on jump rope, a webinar on that. So you can always find the webinar ones at here. Let me go ahead and find that. You can do a search and you'll be able to find these. But definitely you can find it on the YouTube channel. I think it's a past one. It might not be on the blog, but I'll put it right there. So what can you learn from this one? Now there are some, like for example, there's one, a sailor went to sea. These are also hand clap games, so you can do it where it's a hand clap game. A sailor, and you have two people and they go, a sailor went to sea, and then they do all of these. But what they learn is with the sea one, they learn the difference between sea. They learn the difference between sea. They have so they can learn different things like that. So learn about spelling. They can learn about the alphabet. Here they're learning words with A, then B, then C, then D. And the great thing about it is their mind remembers it because this is total physical response, TPR. While they're jumping, they're saying, A, my name is Alice. My brother, sister's name, Sal. We live in Alabama. And they can change this. Oh, my name, the next person comes in, the next student says, hey, my name is Alisa. My brother's sister's name is Adam. We live in Australia. And we bring back. So you kind of get the point there. There's a lot of things that you can do with a ball if you introduce a ball and have around as well. You can have, Fabiana, they brought back alligators. I surely hope not. But see, you could say something like that, alligators from Argentina, and then the students will have a great fun time laughing. And they're learning there because then you understand if they say, oh, there's no alligators in Argentina or something like that, then you see that they do understand and they're paying attention and listening. When you introduce a ball, you can introduce a Nerf ball that's squishy. I think usually works best for this. If you have a big, you can usually get the big balls for inexpensive, the beach ones. The problem with this particular one, if you get the beach balls, is it's too big sometimes and it's hard. And then sometimes they want to misbehave and like throw it around. But I find that with a small little Nerf ball like this, it's easier to manage for some reason. There's different ball activities. We've even done a webinar on that. One is where the student catches the ball and answers a question. So you throw the ball, you can ask the student, it's a good introduction name, what's your name? Um, what's your favorite color? My name is Shelly. My favorite color is teal. Okay. Then you have that student. That student throws it to somebody else and has to ask an about me question. What's your favorite sport? Who's your favorite sport hero? Things like that to get to know you. Another thing that you can do, another option is a ball review toss. So if you're doing, if you have a test or anything and you want to do something really quick, then you can have it to where you ask a question, then that student answers the question. Who was the third president of the US? Okay. And then they answer, and then they ask another question that's going to be there for someone else. You can give them a list of questions that are going to be on the task. You can put it on the board, something like that. Or you can have them come up with their own questions from the chapter. What is 3 plus 4? And then they throw it to somebody else and that person. If Okay, here's what you can do if you feel a little nervous that the student doesn't know the question. I mean, the answer. So I allow them to do the millionaire thing. They have a save. So they are allowed 3 saves if they don't know the answer. You can either do a couple things. They can look it up really fast. You can say, okay, you have 30 seconds to look it up really fast. Or they can decide to have a lifeline, throw it to somebody else who's going to know. And they can't do that all the time, but they have that for a few times. Ball icebreaker questions, and I took this snapshot, the screenshot from just searching Google. But what you can do is you can either get, I prefer masking tape. I prefer getting a bunch of masking tape, sort of like you have stickers here. What you do is you put different icebreaker questions. Or you can even put questions that are from a review or something. And then what you do is you throw the ball wherever they touch it. They have to answer that question. How tall are you, or something like that. So then they read the question and then they have the answer. With very young learners, you can do different things too. You can roll the ball. You can roll the ball instead. If you want to sit down instead, you can roll the ball. Other things that encourage great play and exploration is maker spaces. You can always have a maker space outside. You can have a maker space in the gym. So you have that playground thing. You have the school as your playground with the maker space. And there's different information about that from previous webinars as well. Once again, you can find that if you go to American TESOL site, or you can find it in our previous webinars, or I think this one in particular might be the information in the blogging. Learning stations, and we did do a webinar on the how-to of learning stations, so you'll find out more there. Learning stations have been the way that I've managed classrooms for a very long time, and I love them. I've done it with really young learners all the way to adult learners. It still works. You just make sure the material is for that particular age group and development, and it's things that they like. There's some that are always the same. The reading station, you could have a gaming station, you could have a game station, a board game station. One idea is to get cards like this. And I created this card. I made up this card. Where you have a cards for each one that gives them challenges, and they can get digital badges for completing those challenges, because of course we don't grade what is in the learning station. The learning station is to extend their learning, to give them free opportunity to play and explore, because that is the definition of play. Play is when you have the freedom, and usually outside of grades, because you want them to be able to explore freely, for them to be able to have time to, and they can have different tools and materials to have that play. A lot of times I equate it to, for example, each of us have our own play. You may have your kitchen may be your play, and you go in there and sometimes experiment. Sometimes you take different utensils and you try things out, but you get to experiment and explore. And sometimes you don't do it just because you have to cook dinner. Sometimes you do it because you just want to try baking something because you were inspired by something you saw on the TV. At the gym, when you go to the gym, unless usually you'll have some freedom, you get to decide what do you want to try, what equipment do you want to try, how much of the exercise, and then so it's sort of like a playground for adults that as well. So you can think of play like that. So you have these description card challenges, something like this. If you have a drawing or an imagination station, you can pose to them a problem. They've asked you to build a spaceship. Draw what it looks like, include a description. You can have them do field research. And when I had my students do field research, observation journals were definitely something that aided in this. And observation journals are what you keep for active research. So scientists, even during my master's, that was one form of research I could do for my master's. And so I've included that in my book, Learning to Go. I've included observation forms. I've even included rubrics to grade different things you observe. But these are for little kids as well as adults. So observation forms, I've bookmarked quite a bit. And on Pinterest, you can find some for even 4-year-olds who are observing things like plants, bugs, bug identification, and things like that. So you can get same thing. You can get mentors, local mentors, paleontologists. We used to get a paleontologist, and they'd go out with the kids, and we'd look up Texas hearts and identify them. We would get one from the San Antonio water system, the engineer, and he would help us collect samples from the river and identify microbes. We got someone who was a meteorologist, and we would look at clouds in the sky. We would create cloud catchers, and we would predict the weather. So that's different types of field research. Your students talk about what they identify, they can label, and all of that is part of CLIL as well, having diagrams and labeling. You can have digital scrapbooks and posters that are related. So take them on a nature walk. When they around the school campus, you can find a lot of nature there. You can find grass, you can find plants, and probably nobody's identified it really. So you can make an official identification guide for everyone to benefit from and publish it. So what you can do is you can have your students go on a nature walk, each of them take pictures, and you can do different things. You can create poetry books. There could be a rock collection, identify the rocks around, bug identification, birds, plants. With the plants, you can talk about how the native people of the land use those plants, what they use. The other one is that you can have it to where the students, after they classify and identify what kind of plant it is, they can talk about the different uses. Is this plant poisonous? Is it not? If you do something like a bird collection, record the sounds. Record the sounds of the birds. And then you can do something like you can use something like Book Creator. And Book Creator allows you to put in those sounds, or you can use something like Bunsy. Bunsy will allow you to put in sounds too, or even different links. Thing Link, you can put an audio clip as a link to it. And what you do is you can have people be able to identify the bird according to the sound. So you've captured that sound, and if that person is confused, if they look at what the bird looks like, then they say, oh, I think it's this bird, but I'm not sure. I know that for me, the sound of it really helps if I can identify it with sound. So you can make them very interactive, these digital scrapbooks and posters. And these are the ones that I recommend: Book Creator, Canva, Bunsy, Visme, Tack, ThingLink, Pictochart, ByteSlide, S'more, Glogster. All of those are great free apps and web tools for any device. Not all of them come for any device, but a lot of them do. Kick a Clue app, the Goose Chase Out, and QRWild.com are great for scavenger hunts. You have your students, they can complete scavenger hunts outside. They can also do things like photo challenges. They go outside and they're able to, you can put it even in your Instagram. You can take something like this, just take a screenshot. That's what I do. Post it on your Schoology, your Edmodo, just, or you can print it out and give them the challenge. And they can have where, for example, take a picture of a fraction, something that represents a fraction. They could say this represents 1/3, and it could be a pizza, and they ate some of the pizza. Something like substances. They could take pictures of different, like salt, for example, and then put NaCl. That's what I found for salt. Identify 5 um, elements that are in your house, things like that, or things that have that ingredients. So here's different types of photo challenges. You can put, for example, badges with those as well, and make it to where they can achieve badges. iNigma and QuickMark are my favorite ways to explore QR codes. You can put QR codes around the ground. They can have jokes, they can have answers, they can have stories about that particular area, memories surrounded. So it's a good way to get them exploring, going around. You can have, for example, this one. With QuickMark, it's these two are for any device. They're for iOS and they're for Android apps. But when you download them, they're free, of course. And QuickMark lets you create a QR code, which is why I like it. Another QR code generator that's specifically meant for scavengers slash treasure hunts, which makes it really easy for you to do one with questions and answers, is this one, classtools.net. And Ilse, it sounds like Ilse, it sounds like you've done all of my webinars so far already with your students, so you're already a pro. um, there's different types of augmented reality that could be used outside as well. So here's me and Richard, my friend Richard, and we're playing this game, Augmented Reality Soccer. So you don't see it, but we see it on my phone, a ball, and we're both kicking it around. You can also have where you do it with baseball, where you do, and they have it for any device. I'm not recommending any particular app because there's so many. It's for any sport. The other one that they have some other ones as well that'll get your students moving. But there's one called Quo Effects. If you do Quo Effects allows you to make special effects within your surroundings. So if you do something like Quo Effects, you can have that outside and they can play around with the different special effects and making a scene. So they can blow up this school or something like that. But I mean, that might not be so nice, so probably not do that. But they could do something like practice having a dinosaur come to the school. They have a dinosaur, like a brontosaurus, and it could be nice. He could be eating out of the trees and stuff. So that could be very nice as well. There's another one, of course. This one, I don't think it's a free app, but it is a really cool one. It's an app called Run with Zombies. And I'm gonna. A lot of people do that app, and it's both iOS. I think you might have to pay for that, but it's you can have your students go around and they practice. All of these get your students moving and get them active and in health. There's a few tips that I have out there for those of you who are doing these things that I've learned from when I've taken my students exploring. First of all, you want to work with parents and you want to get to know with parents. The parents get to know, for example, what is the allergies? What kind of allergies do they have? Do they have allergies to certain air? For example, I have weather change, an allergy to weather change. Make sure you have a first aid kit with everything. Make sure students are dressed well. Make sure they wear comfortable shoes. Make sure that they have the gear if it's going to be really hot. Then make sure that they have a hat, sunblock, that they're wearing light colored clothes. Oh, I think they have, look up AR Soccer Light, Peggy. I think they should have a free one because the one that I did was free. So they should have, if it's light, maybe there's one for light. The other thing to have with kids is make sure that they're not carrying a lot with you. I've learned because they get really tired after hiking for a while, and guess who gets stuck with the bags? You do. So unless you want to be stuck with 1,000 bags, lugging them around, I definitely suggest that you have them pack something very little. You may want to also have them, if they're going to be hiking through long grass, they need to have long socks, and they have to have like white pants and stuff so they're not too hot. Um, you can have, for example, where your students will have a bug spray if that's something they can have. And so if one of them needs, for example, if they have asthma or something, make sure that they have all those stuff as well. So these are all things that are definitely that you should take into consideration when working with students as well. So you are going to have access to all these slides and everything, and even the bookmarks. Right now, I'm still working on the post, so it's not complete yet. But when it does, then You'll go ahead and see everything. You can already get the slides and stuff like that if you do have